Sorry about that. That was just a quick check on placement for the camera. I'm not sure that that's going to work once the lights are on, but there you go. everybody, and welcome to StashBlaster Quilts. My name is Maria, and I'm here to help you make more quilts in less time with a lot less stress. So today is going to be sort of a catch-up day. I've got several different projects we're going to work on today. And I'm going to start this. I normally start with a tip, and I'm going to do that again, but the tip isn't mine. Yesterday I was sitting at a quilting group that I belong to, and I was sitting next to one of my lovely subscribers, and I was mentioning how I wasn't sure what I was going to do for next year. For those of you that have been around, in 2022 we did a quilt together as a group, so I kept putting up votes, and people voted for what they wanted and choices, and then we designed it together, pieced it together, I quilted it in front of everybody, and so that was kind of a big group effort. And then this year, when I put up the options, the overwhelming choice was for the mystery quilt that we're doing now. And so I was saying, you know, some of what I was doing, I was kind of winging it. I've never done a mystery quilt before, and so I wanted to make sure that I did my best. And so it was Patricia who said to me, you know, okay, look at your round 6. We need some more information there. So just so you know, round 6 has been beefed up. That's the one that was assembled the center. I didn't know what to say because there were all the different sizes and everything, and I didn't think about the fact that, no, you still might want to have some guidance as to how to assemble that center. So I went ahead and did that. But I was mentioning, you know, that's part of the problem, is that I'm doing this right along with you, you know, a couple of weeks in advance, pretty much. I'd already designed the blocks in advance and everything, but in terms of the actual assembly and all that, and that I wished I had had a little bit more lead time. And she said to me, well, why don't you ask what people want early? Now there's a very simple organizing solution. Ask the expert and ask them early. So you guys are the experts on what you like and what you'd like to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the chat here 4 options for next year. Okay? The first one would be the design as a team again. So starting in January, you'll have like 4 or 5 different types of quilt options, and you can go ahead and pick what you like, and then we'll make, you know, and we'll just keep going, and you'll take lots and lots of little polls, and the idea is that we'll design it together. The second one would be a mystery quilt like this year, and that's where this one comes from. And so if that's what you'd like, then I can start designing it early, so that would be helpful. And then the third one would be kind of like a block of the month, but every session, so that's twice a month. These would be smaller blocks, it's a little bit simpler maybe. And then the fourth option would be a standard block of the month, so we would have 12 blocks at the end of the year. And then that would mean that we would need to do it on our own, the piecing, the putting together the top and the quilting and all of that stuff, because by then we'd be looking at what are we doing in 2025. So in either of the block of the month or the 2 blocks a month program, that would be more than a year to get to completion. My goal with this mystery quilt was that it would be done, quilted, labeled, bound, completely done this calendar year. And so there's extra days built in, there's extra time here at the end. So that was the idea, is that we could complete it in the year, with the idea that this was tabletopper size. If you decide you want to do mystery quilts again, we can do another mystery quilt, and then we'll talk, there'll be one more poll, and that would be, what sizes do you want? Do you like having, like this year, where there were 3 tabletopper sizes and a lap size? Or would you like something bigger? Would you like a bed size quilt? Would you like a couple of different options? So if I have more time, I can design a more intricate quilt. One with more pieces and more color and all of that. So think about it, and then you can shoot me an email at mail@StashBlasterQuilts.com, or you can leave it here in the chat. All you need to do is say 1, 2, 3, or 4. Okay? So whichever you like, I'm happy to do. But having a little bit more lead time would be good, because this is exactly the kind of thing that I can start working on when I'm doing all that traveling in August and September for the conferences, because all I need is my design book, my idea book. So I can be sketching in airports or in hotel rooms or whatever, and that would really make things a lot easier for me, which is of course what everything's all about. So anyway, so if you could please give it a thought about what you'd like to do for next year. And like I said, they're right there in the chat. It's the Design as a Team, Mystery, the twice a month block, and the once a month block. And I'll be happy to do that. Okay, so the tip, ask the expert, ask them early. By the way, it never helps if you wait until the last minute to ask for help. It's better than nothing. I'd much prefer you ask for help at any time than not. But even with my organizing company, I will get people who have to go to court the next day because of the condition of their home, and they'll call me at 6 o'clock at night and expect me to come and work all night, overnight, so that their house can pass and they can have good photos to show court the next morning. It's not going to happen. Okay? So the earlier you ask the question of the expert, the better a result you're going to get, both from their answer, and then if there's questions along the way, you still have time. So, ask the expert, ask them early. Okay. I was asked about the mystery quilt the other day, and the person had seen this, both on the black and on the white, and had asked me more about the fabric itself. And all I could find was a piece like this big up here. That's because it was downstairs. So I brought up a nice big fat piece to show you this fabric. Okay, so you should get a good view of it there. And so you can see it does have like leaves and butterflies and other shapes in the batik. But for the most part, I picked it for its color. And even the spots that are super light are yellow instead of white. Because then that way, even if you've got the palest color in this up against the white, it still has contrast. Not as much, but it still has contrast. If it's up against the black, none of this is super, super dark either. So I've got some fairly dark purples. Like here's one. You can see right here that this one's fairly dark, but compared to black, I've got some black right here. Hold on. Even up against the black, you can see that there's a little bit of contrast. And there's not much of this super dark over here. So that's why I liked it. It was kind of all medium, but with some good contrast within itself, and it would contrast well with the white and the black. Now, one of the questions that came up was, does it have to be one fabric? Could I pick, 80 squares out of my stash and just use those? Of course you can. You can do the same thing with the backgrounds. So I picked backgrounds where it was white on white, or it was black, has colored little polka dots scattered randomly about. Did I bring the black up too? I did, but it's over there. Because I wanted a little bit of extra color showing up in the black. Here's the thing about backgrounds that I have found. If you're not going to make sure that you have enough of one fabric to do the whole quilt, pick at least 3 and divide it evenly. Yes, that means you're going to have some extra left in all 3 of those background pieces, but it doesn't look like it was a mistake. So if I'm doing, let's say I'm doing a very simple quilt, let's say it's blue and white, and the white is a white on white. I'll have anywhere between 3 and 10 white on white fabrics. So when you get up close to it, here's a white on white polka dot, and here's maybe playing dice, and maybe here's flowers, but they're scattered amongst the whole quilt. So it looks like I intentionally put in a bunch of different white on whites, versus when you're sewing and you're on the last 3 blocks and you run out of fabric because you miscalculated or you miscut. And then you either have to try to piece, which if it's something like white on white, you'll never piece really seamlessly and invisibly. Or you put in a different color. You put in a different white on white, which might not be the same shade. Or the white on white is more yellow than the other white on white in terms of the paint on the top. So it's much better if you can scatter it throughout the whole quilt. So if you're going to go with more than just picking a background color and a focus fabric, make sure you've got a lot of diversity in both. It'll make for a much better quilt. Okay, I'm going to get back to the mystery quilt, but I was asked another question this week about this quilt. This is a challenge quilt for Centerville, where I'm going to be tomorrow night. Okay, so it's a little hard to see the shape. Maybe let me switch this to wide and then go stand over in the corner. Oops, there it is. So hopefully you can see this. There's 3 points at the top, the one just flopped down, and then 2 indents on the side. So this is going on my gaming table, but I was asked about how did I do these angles on the binding. And so I thought that after we did the mystery quilt, I would show you how I did that. Because when I made this quilt, for those of you who've been around, you've seen this, but if you're new, you haven't. This was a charm challenge, so we exchanged 5-inch squares. And when I knew I was going to be making the equilateral triangles, instead of just cutting them out, what I did is I sewed down both sides of the 5-inch squares. And then I cut my triangle out of the bottom. So sewn line, triangle. Okay? That meant that I had 2 pieces that were already sewn together that made another triangle. Now, it was almost exactly the same size as this one, but I chose to go smaller. And it doesn't qualify for the charm challenge because there's 2 of each fabric, because there's the 2 triangles on each side with 2 fabrics each. So they're mirror images of each other, but the same 2 fabrics. And rather than worrying about how I was putting them together, did I accidentally duplicate something, I didn't want to stress about it, like I tell you not to do. And so I created this little table topper, which is going to go on a little round table that I have, so that all of the points are going to just flop down like that. Okay? But I, again, have all of these weird, funky inside and outside corners to put the binding around. So, assuming that there's time at the end, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bind this with you. I'm going to show you what steps I've already taken to do that. If there isn't time for some reason, then we'll do it next session. But so I am going to show you how to do this, either this time or next time. But this has been something I've been asked about quite a bit lately. And another quick update, the underwater quilt. Hold on, let me go back to the big view again. This is coming along well. Let me move these so you can see a little better. I had a little bit of an avalanche earlier, so there you go. Okay, so it is completely done in terms of the top, and I have quilted all the water. And what I did is I tried to color match the thread as best as I could in the water, and I did tie off on both sides of like the kelp. I did not go across. So I can show you this a little bit more up close and personal later if you'd like. I have started quilting pebbles in the sand. Now, it's not done by any stretch. And I am, again, color thread matching close. I'm not wearing as close because there's shadows and sand, because no grain sits right next to another perfectly. So I'm a little less concerned about it down there. And so I'm doing all pebbles down in the sand, and then I will do some water up in the sand on the top, because that's, as the waves are coming and rippling in, you're going to get more of a water effect. So I'm going to do water up at the top, water quilting, excuse me. And so I think that overall this is coming along well. No promises, none whatsoever, but I am hoping that the sand is done by the next time I see you. At least on the bottom, if not on the top. But I have a little bit more time to sew now, because the new book is in its editing phase. So I have the appendixes that I'm doing now. There's 10 of them. Well, there's 9 appendixes and an about the author. So 9 appendixes plus, and then I am pretty much done until I get edit notes back. So that's pretty cool, which will mean I'll have a little bit more time to sew and work on my sewing room, because ever since the floors went in, this room has been a disaster, and I haven't had a chance to work on it. I'm moving things around just to be able to get to what I need. So I'm really looking forward to getting that taken care of, because I don't function well the way it is right now. And I want more time to sew, because that keeps me from murdering my family. And not, if anything ever happens to them, I promise you I didn't do it. But, you know, I get snarly occasionally, and nobody really needs to put up with that. So, anyway, so I do need some more time to sew. So I'm very happy that that's going to be coming along. And then I'll be able to, I'm hoping by the end of the year that this quilt is done. The kelp, I'm just going to run long lines up this way, so I won't have as much to tie off. But again, like right here where this fish is in front of the kelp, I'll have to end, I'll hop over, hop back, and then keep going until, you know, all of them are done. I only think I have, the eyeball of the crab goes over kelp, but I think the orange one over there, his nose is over the kelp. But there's not a lot of it, not like doing all this blue. And this blue is just a simple ripple going across, so it wasn't hard at all. It's just a lot of ends to bury, because every single row except I'll show you that one that goes all the way across right at the very top. You can't hardly see it, but if you can see where the sand is over there, the row just behind that is the only row that goes all the way across without something breaking the way. Every other row has at least one, and most of them had like 5 things I hopped over in the way. So, that, like I said, lots of end tying off. But one thing I did was I made sure that I did it along the way. So when I had the first third done, because I did that all in one sitting, then the quilt went downstairs with me. And so when I was in front of the TV or whatever, I had it all tied off. And then I did the next group. And so like 3 different sessions, and I had all of the water tied off. Which means I don't have all those threads everywhere to get messed up when I'm quilting other things. So when I'm doing this kelp, there are no threads on the back here for me to get hung up on, or to make snarls or anything else, or mess up with my tension on the ones I'm sewing on. So it's really been worthwhile to just do it as I go. I didn't do it every time I stopped, though. That's not what I meant. But as I went across, I would jump to a clear area and then back. So I had these big V's going up and down all of this kelp. Just because, you know, there was like 30 V's. But then I could snip, do those 2 ends, and then I still had a big loop on the back. So that when I turned it over, I didn't have any just loose pieces. I didn't have anything that accidentally got pulled back into the quilt too far. It did use up a lot of extra thread, but the peace of mind was worth it. So that's what's going on with the big under the water quilt. So I I still don't know what I'm going to call it. Right now, although I'm calling it the underwater quilt now with you, I think it may be Fish Gotta Swim and Birds Gotta Fly, since we've got birds on the back. So, because before it was a bird can't teach a fish to fly and a fish can't teach a bird to swim or whatever. But that's too long of a title. So I think it may wind up being Fish Gotta Swim and Birds Gotta Fly. But so that's current working title on that. Okay, I think that catches everything up. If it doesn't and I've forgotten something, I apologize. Either leave a note in the chat or get back to me another time, and we'll address it then. Okay, so the mystery quilt. So round 7 was the first border, the pieced border cutting list. And so today we're going to sew the pieced border, and I've gotten some of it done in advance just so it doesn't take as long to do. And this is round, let me squint here, round 8. And this should be going up tonight or tomorrow. It should be up on the website. So, let me pull this down here. The advantage of flannel is that I didn't have to actually tug. Okay, so this is the center of the mystery quilt. This is the 9 patch, the 3x3. Okay, now the whole idea here, actually let me switch cameras. This first interior border, I know I've got a mess on my table, I apologize. Like I said, ever since the floors got done, a lot of this got messy, and I was trying to prep for today, so some things go better than others. Okay, so the reason for the interior border is these triangles on the square. Now, if you like it ending like this, then you don't have to do the pieced border at all. But I thought that it would be nice to have something more, oops, like that as my outer edge. It also makes it a little bit harder for people to know how you pieced it. So I thought that might be fun as well, because one of the things that I enjoyed about creating this block is it looks so tiny, and it looks like it was so hard to put together. All these minuscule little pieces and getting everything lined up. And the fact that we did it the way we did is kind of a cheat. So if we can make this slightly harder for people to figure out which is the real block and which isn't, I kind of thought that would be fun. So if you wanted to, you could get extra, not difficult, but if you added a 1/2 inch here, you could put extra seams in here, or fake seams. So it would look like you pieced these two pieces together as well, so that it lined up with these two pieces being pieced. But I didn't bother. I thought that this was cool enough. So that is what the interior pieced border is going to do for us. And then if you decide later that you don't like it, then don't put it on. The next border is just going to be of the background fabric going all the way around. So the next one of these is super duper easy. So in the white, here, let me just pull this down. Now obviously this is the wrong background, but it'll be another 1.5 inch border. I just haven't cut this black yet. That would go here like this, and that would be your black outer border. Now, if you're doing the lap size quilt, one of the things that I recommended in my notes was you could take and put a beefier outer border on of your focus fabric, let's say 3 inches, which would be like to here. And that could make for a nice chunky outer border, so you'd have all the complexity in the middle, and you would take up 3 inches on each side, so 6 inches more width out of your focus material. So if that's something that you want to do as well, I believe that the measurements are in the original fabric requirements. But for the table toppers, this is how it was going to end, with your pieced interior border and then your solid exterior border, and then it's done. Okay? So I hope that that all made sense. Let me, oops. I just want to move my notes over to make sure I'm showing them on the way that they are on the handout so that it all makes sense. Okay. Move that to the side. I'm going to put the star back. And because my chair sometimes scrapes against the wall, I'm going to put one pin. Okay. So, let's go back to camera 3. Okay. And I am just looking to make sure where I'm working that you can see. This is just my pins. Okay? So I'm going to need that back later, but I'm going to tuck that over on the side. I'm going to get this cutting mat out of the way. Today was a very busy day, so I got home just in time. Actually, I had more time than usual in some ways, in that my hair had time to dry before I started doing this. But I didn't get a whole lot of setup time. Okay. If this is your first time, I'm a professional organizer by trade. I do not make enough doing this yet that I can give that up. So I'm out working with clients every day. And so I come home sometimes kind of, dirty and smelly. So sometimes I show up and my hair is still dripping from my shower. Okay, so you're going to take the 1.5 the larger focus and background squares, which are 2.5 inches. You're going to draw the diagonal line, and you're going to make yourself some half square triangles, because we are going to need these in the corners. Hold on. Can you see that? Yeah, here it is. Okay, so when this piece, oops, is on here like this, right? We're going to want to put a corner here, and then this piece will have the black corner in this, the black triangle in this corner, so that these 4 patches here, hourglass type blocks, but they're not, will be completely finished in the corners. So you're going to go ahead, and once you've made your half square triangles, then you're going to cut them down to 1.5. Plus, you're going to take all of the 1.5 inch blocks, both in background and in your focus fabric, and draw the diagonal lines on those. Now, the way this unit gets put together is what we want to create. Do I have a partial? No. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and just do a couple. Now, I have pinned these hopefully you can see. Okay. I pinned the pairs together just to make it a little bit easier for when I was doing this in front of you. But you won't necessarily have to do that. So you're going to take your background fabric, and then you're going to put your 1.5 inch square on. And this is different than what I normally do. Normally I would sew on the diagonal line and then sew 1/2 inch over. Okay? But first of all, a lot of you are a little nervous about tiny pieces. So since this is an 1.5 inches, right? Hold on. If I take 1/2 inch out of that, let me try to put this like this so you can see. That's going to leave me with 1/2 inch to my seam line. Okay? So from here's where my seam would go. Here is my point. That's 1/2 inch. So that would give me a 1-inch raw half square triangle. So it's going to finish at a 1/2 inch, which I think would make most of you nervous that I speak with. Now, could you cheat that 1/2 inch a little bit? Sure, you could. But you can't go too far or you're going to lose your structural integrity of not having enough material to hold your seam where it belongs. When you're doing miniatures, they're not getting pulled up on people, right? Like it is when you've got a bed quilt or a lap-size quilt, or you're putting dishes on it and they're scraping across. So that's why I really don't want to cheat that very far. So that would be the 1/4 inch on each side is a 1/2 inch away from your original seam line. I decided that I'm going to keep them but not recommend that you do. So, because I'm going to use mine in chip blocks where there's going to be another kind of support behind it. So if I'm using an 1/8 inch seam, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to cheat it. It'll be a slightly larger block, and that's fine for what I'm going to do with it. But for most of you, I know that that's going to be too much. So you can go ahead and throw out your little triangles. Okay, so let me sew this first one. Now, I was sewing on the star earlier, and I'm going to show you what I did. So I didn't have a leader ender. So I'm going to be doing this one from the beginning. Oh, I love these. These are just some long-handled tweezers that I won as a door prize. And it came with a pair of scissors that I did not like because they were it was flat stock, so all the edges were very 90 degrees and very uncomfortable to use as scissors. So I gave away the scissors, but I kept the tweezers. Okay, now, in this particular case, I would normally put this in my machine so that I would be sewing this way. However, because I don't want this to get bunched up, all of these I'm going to sew starting at the halfway point because it's going to prevent me from having problems with that point getting sucked into the machine. So, a leader would have been better here. Don't get me wrong, I just don't happen to have any black leaders right now. I was doing a project and I used them all. I need to make more. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and sew this. Now that one is going to be the leader for the other side. So let me get this lined up here. Now when I pinned them together, I didn't worry about lining them up exactly because I knew I was going to do it here at my machine. So sometimes I just put them together in a way so I know how they go. And now I'm going to go undo the other one. Now if you noticed, they're going opposite directions from each other. So on the first one, the body of the bigger piece is going this way, and on this one it's going that way. And that's because when we put them together, it'll make more sense. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to use one of these as a leader for the next round. So let me do one more. And it doesn't matter which one you do. But I did double check the placement on all of these first. This is the fiddliest part. This border is going to be more stressful than the whole rest of the quilt. It's the most complex because you have to pay attention to a lot of little things that you didn't have to in the beginning. Alright, so let me just sew that so I can clip these. Alright. And then I'll cut these apart. And then I'll take them over here to the ironing board. Computer malfunction. Hold on. There's my ironing board. Alright. And let me tighten this. Why is it not tightening? For those of you who have been with me from the beginning, this looks very familiar. I had so many tech troubles at the beginning. And I still have a hate-hate relationship with technology, but we're going to make it work today. Okay, so I actually did this a little bit different in the instructions. I apologize. What I did in the instructions was I told you to sew your rectangles together first, like this, right? And then sew these squares on. You really can do it either way. So I did it backwards here. I apologize. Okay, so with the squares on the top, now there's going to be a focus fabric with a background square and a background fabric with a focus square. And so let's warm these up. And then I'm going to finger press. I use my nails too, making sure that's nice and flat. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. That looks like I missed a little bit. Okay, there we go. Press it flat. Now, I generally will let these sit until they're completely cool, because that's going to give me the crispest line right here. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to trim this thread. And then I'm going to trim off these triangles. Could you use a ruler and cut that at exactly 1/4 of an inch? Sure, there's nothing wrong with that. But you can eyeball it too, because it's inside the quilt. Nobody will ever know. The point is that you sewed on the line, so it's nice and straight and where it needs to be. Throw my thread out. I'm not just throwing my thread on the floor. I had somebody ask me about that. I have a trash can right under here. Sorry, you can't see it. It's under this part of my sewing table. And so I'm just going to use that. Let me get back here to where you can see it on the machine. Okay. Now, so the first step, I said to sew these two rectangles together. Then you sew on, here you go, okay? Okay, so you're going to have these pairs, okay? Both of the triangles the same side, okay? So now I'm going to go ahead and sew the two that I just did together. Like I said, I did this the reverse order, but you're going to get the same end result, so whichever way you're more comfortable with. I just happened to do it this way this time. Okay, and then there's my other leader endery type piece. So I mentioned you have to lay this all out. If you start by putting the two rectangles together, then they're going to be paired up. They're always in pairs, so you don't have to worry about your orientation at that point. But you do when you put the squares on. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead, and this is kind of a tough part because you're going to have some of your seams go one way and some go the other. So sometimes you're going to have all of the seams on one side. So your options are either when you do your pressing of putting your squares together to pay attention and make sure they all go the one way, and then when you press and make these that they all go the other way. Or you can press them open, and that works too. In this case, I have some that are open and some that are not because I was doing this amongst everything else and I didn't get it perfect every time. There you go. Okay, so when you have these units done, what I want you to do is double check their orientation, because if you look here, this is right, because I've got my bright against the white here. But if I put it here, I'm wrong. So half of them are going to be one way and half are going to be the other. So you need to pay attention. So that's why if I were just doing the rectangles first, you can see here that this would be wrong. Okay? So this is one that would go on another side. I would lay these all out just like I'm doing now, including the corners, like this, just to make sure that it's all the way I want it to be before I sew these units together. So I hope that all makes sense. Once you have the whole row like this on all four, once you have the rows for all four sides done, then you're going to sew these two together and then the bottom together and press, and then we'll add the corners to the other two sides and then press and then attach and then press and then we're done. So I hope that that all makes sense. The idea being that this part of the entire quilt, you're using the smallest squares, those being the 1.5 inches where we're going to sew on the line. And there are the two different orientations. So this is tricky, so take your time. In the instructions, the first thing is where to draw the diagonal lines, then putting the rectangles together, then how to put the how to orient the small squares to get your corners, then the press and the trim and all of that, double checking how it's all aligned, and then sewing it together. So hopefully these instructions are nice and clear when you look at them. I'm just going to go ahead and start doing the sewing part. And then once that's done, I'll be able to show you the actual final assembly, assuming that there's time. Well, you know, we have less than 20 minutes left. There's not going to be time for me to finish today, but I am going to go ahead and work on it while we're chatting. It does mean that the star is going to have to wait till next time. And I accidentally turned my machine off and turned it back on. So there you go. I have to wait for it a second. And then to do the whole needle up, needle down thing. Okay. So I was also asked the other day what machine I use. There are some people who are rigorous in their choice of sewing machines. And there is nothing wrong with that. I am all for, if you find something you like, go for it. I have used so many machines over the years that I really don't have huge preferences. The machine that I'm using right now is a Janome. It's a Memory Craft 6500. Would I like a different one? Yeah, I'd probably like one with a bigger throat, although the throat on this is not bad. I'm doing the fish and birds quilt in this throat size. Actually, so just out of curiosity, I have a ruler right here. Let me switch this over so you can watch my craziness. Nobody gets seasick, please. Okay. So, from this part of my machine, knowing that I've got a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch here at the end of the ruler, to my needle is about 8.5, so 8 3/4 inches. So it's perfectly serviceable. I have some with 3-inch throats. So, you know, when you're dealing with that, you're talking laptop or smaller quilts, because there just isn't the room to get the bulk through. Even if you, and I have done this, if you start in the middle and you've got a small pattern, you can put 6 inches of batting in, quilt to within maybe 1 inch of the batting, put in another 6-inch strip, whip the two battings together, then open up the backing and the top and do the next strip, and then add another. I have done this. This will drive you cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But it can be done, and you can do a super king size wedding ring quilt on a domestic 4-inch, because that was my 4-inch, not my 3-inch, my 4-inch throated machine. But there will be swearing potentially involved, there will be lots of hair pulling, and the concern is that when you get done with the row, the quilting is going to take up some of that batting and some of that fabric, but not where you haven't quilted yet. So you get some rippling that you need to adjust for, so that when you put that top back down over, the bottom stays without getting a lot of puckers in it, and then the top gets quilted nicely. So it can be really a pain to do it, but it, like I said, it can be done. It depends on how much of an emergency it is to get that quilt done in time for a wedding, and I can't imagine why I would say anyone would need to get a quilt done on the way to a wedding, but sometimes you got to get a quilt done on the way to the wedding. So I have finished quilts where I'm embroidering the label on the airplane or in the hotel room just before I box it, wrap it, and give it. So if that's not you, good for you. I'm proud of you, because I can't do it. There's just sometimes, well, I can a lot of the time, but there are just sometimes that life comes and it'll bite you, and you got to do what you got to do. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm actually sewing the rectangles together like I told you to. Let me come back over here to camera 3. And then I'll do the triangles. I'm trying to behave myself here. Like I said, now they're just pinned in here roughly. You can see that they're like poking out here. That doesn't matter because I'm going to line them up after. But they're lined up so that they're going to go in opposite directions. And the correct opposite direction. So the advantage was I had done some of this in advance, which is why I had the full ones to show you. So like this one was already sewn, the rectangles together, and I've got some pieces here. But having your hands moving and your mouth moving at the same time, and not either stitching your fingers or saying something super stupid, it's a juggling act. So anyway, next week I'm not only going to be dealing with the book stuff, but our quilting group is having, it's not really a mini retreat, but we're doing quilt camp again. For those of you that have been around for a while, in February we take 3 days. It's usually a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we set up at the fire hall and we sew all day. We have food that we normally order and bring in, and we have our guild members teach classes and things like that. This is less formal, but it's the same kind of thing. And so on Tuesday, we can't leave our machines there overnight. We can on Wednesday, but not on Tuesday, because Tuesday night's bingo night. So we're not encouraging people to bring machines on Tuesday. So they have asked me to do a quick little demo on English paper piecing, which is what the fish and birds quilt, that's that technique. So I am going to be showing people how to do that, so that ought to be fun. And even though a bunch of my staff is on vacation, I tell them I don't understand why they think they should be allowed to take vacations, because I don't take vacations, right? But they seem to think they should be allowed. You know, my kid has just graduated high school. I won't see him next year. Yeah. I sound meaner than I am. But so since they're not going to be around, I was sitting here saying I'm going to have to quit quilt camp, except for the one class I have to teach. And Scott was like, no, you're going to go for all 3 days. I'm going to cover the office. And so I am going to have all 3 days. So I'm going to get a chance to work on some of my own stuff. So I'll be finishing up the mystery quilt most likely. I don't know if I'll get the white and the black done, but I'm sure I'll work on at least one of them. And I will be, if I haven't finished the star quilt, because this is next week. Oh no, I can't do that because I have to show you how to do the binding. Alright, well, I won't be working on the star quilt. But I have a stack of my own UFOs over on the wall. So I'm going to get a chance to work on some of those, so that'll be a lot of fun. And I'm also going to get some quilts appraised. We're having a quilt appraiser come in, and so she's going to offer either to do formal written appraisals, or she'll do just verbal ones to give people an idea what their quilts are worth. So I'm going to get a couple of my... Oh, I didn't do the other sides. Get a couple of my quilts done, which will be good. Okay, there it is. So it's going to be busy couple of days. 3 days. But I'm going to be productive, and that's good. And I don't have to write, which is even better. I'm still picking photos for the book, but it can be in editing before the photos are all in place because they're supplemental, so that's good. And I have the appendixes to do, like I mentioned before. But the bulk of the writing is done, and then I'm hoping by the end of the year to have the 2 supplements written, starting in September. So September, October, November, December, those 4 months to get the 2 supplements written, because they're partially written already. So if I can get them done, then I could potentially be through the editing process and can be completely done writing about hoarding in these books before the summer next year. And that would be nice. But the big crush has been to try to get the main book finished before all these conventions this summer. So that's why it's been so stressful. But if all goes well, I should have them available for sale. So that'll be really cool. And take off a lot of my stress. Because I'm going to start... I told Scott I'm going to take 2 weeks off where I don't write anything for the books. Because I have other things I need to write and other things I need to do. But I'm going to take 2 weeks off from thinking about hoarding. And then I'll get back to the supplements. And so that will be very good for me. And some of you have been saying, we want patterns, we want this stuff for some of the other stuff that I've been doing. Like the fish and birds quilt. So, I've got the basic pattern done, but it's not patterned for sale. You know, I have it just for my own use. So, I will hopefully have it ready, and it will be available for purchase, you know, maybe towards the end of the year. I'm trying not to overcommit. It's interesting, because a lot of the YouTubers that I watched used to put out, like, every Friday, they'd have out a video. And theirs are all edited videos, not like this. It's just you're stuck with what you get. And a lot of them have gone to every other week or once a month or whenever I feel like it. Which is interesting because they have like millions of followers, and the followers like me, we just wait. We just wait until the next time. It's like, okay. But I'm still trying to make sure that since I'm doing these as live streams, that there's enough interesting stuff that that people will still be enjoying it. Okay. So this border shouldn't take you very long, even if you're doing the lap size quilts. It's quick. I did have my original intent when I was doing this was actually not to do it as a separate border like this. One thing I considered was before I assembled the center. So if you haven't assembled your center yet, you could do this. My thought was that before I assembled the center, what I could do grab this block here. This is an extra. I could take all the ones that were on the outside and go ahead and attach these early, so that then when I assembled my outer border, some of them would have these extra pieces already sewn on. So the only thing I would have to worry about is either insetting the corner squares or doing partial seams, which would be quick and easy just to do the corner squares. So I did think about doing it that way, which would make it so it's a little less fiddly to get everything to line up. So if you wanted to do that, you could. You could take all of the outsides. So it's all but one if you're doing the 3x3. But if you're doing the lap size, you know, there's a lot of them you wouldn't need to do this to. You could go ahead and attach your pieced border pieces for those outside blocks, and then not have the longer strips to worry about. Okay? Excuse me. So that's just a thought if you want to go ahead and try that. I couldn't figure out how to explain that in the directions, so that's why I didn't do it that way. I thought it might confuse people in terms of, well, how many outside squares is it, and how do I know which ones it's going to be? So that's why I'm having it done as long strips like this. But you certainly could. I think that that would make life a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and press these ones that I just sewed. I only have a couple minutes left. If this is your first time, please like and subscribe. Hit the bell if you want to get reminders. I do start the stream about 15 minutes before we start doing anything, so that you'll be able to, you know, grab a soda or something and get ready and be with us from the beginning. I've had people tell me that they like the 15 minutes. There's other places I know that do like a half an hour or an hour in advance. I think that's a little bonkerdoo. Oh, sorry, Donna. I just saw your note that you're getting dizzy. I'm assuming that's all of my camera moving around and the flipping back and forth between them. But okay, we're not going to do that anymore today. So I hope you're feeling okay. However, so I do that 15 minutes, and then it's always a start with a tip, like I did today, and then you know, I update you on everything, and we just kind of go from there. So I hope you had a good time, everybody. And so when we come back next time, I will have this quilt with all of the borders on it, so that you'll be able to see it on the wall. All the interior ones, and then we will put the exterior ones on together, because that'll be easy enough to do. And then the top will be fully complete. And from there, we'll go on to the final steps. So we will definitely be done with this quilt early this year. If you, like I said, please like, subscribe, do all of those kinds of things, and then vote for what we're going to do next year. Because by voting now, you'll get a better product, because I'll have more time. So again, it's in the chat. If you're listening to this and you're not like looking at the chat right now, you have 4 options. You either put your number in the chat, or you can email me at mail@StashBlasterQuilts.com. Do you want to do another Design It Together quilt like last year? Do you want to do another mystery quilt like this year? 2 blocks a month or 1 block a month quilts. And those last 2 will be for the 12 months. So you won't finish it until 2025. Because you'll do that afterwards. You'll assemble the top and finish it in 2025. So let me know what you would like to do. Thank you all so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. I don't tell you often enough. I get so many lovely emails and notes and things like that from you guys. I mean, there aren't many of you. There's only 31, I think, subscribers at this point. It's been very slow growth, but partially it's because they're not edited content. But a lot of you are sticking around. You're sending me nice cards and well-wishing, especially like about the book. I can't tell you how much I appreciate each and every one of you. So thank you very much again. Hopefully, like I said, you're enjoying this, and I will have the interior border on this. And then next time, I'm going to show you how we're going to go ahead and put the binding on these wacko angles. And we'll put the exterior border on there, and you'll see kind of how the Fish and Birds quilt is going. So we got a lot to talk about. So have a wonderful couple of weeks. I will see you here in 2 weeks, first and third Wednesday of every month at 7 o'clock. Take care and have a great time. Bye-bye. Let's go sew.